In this video, I'd like to talk about the kinds of malicious actions that a typical piece of mobile malware might take. And I do want to start off by saying that since a mobile device is basically just a computer capable of running software, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that mobile malware can pretty much do anything the traditional malware could do. So all the nefarious deeds, if you will, that are associated with traditional PC-based malware instances have analogs in the mobile world. And having said that, though, there are some distinctions to consider, and what I'd like to do is maybe focus more on some of these differences versus on things that are a bit more vanilla and mainstream. And so actually, let me start off with a very traditional, age-old area that most malware tends to play in. That's the area of kind of amusement. And so a lot of the traditional malware out there really wasn't written for any type of financial incentive. It really was written because the authors maybe were bored, they wanted some degree of notoriety, and so on and so forth. And while the vast majority of stuff you see today is financially driven, you still do see some malware authors who are interested in these types of more amusement-oriented malware activities. So in this vein, a couple of examples are things like iKey. It's an example of mobile malware, which actually changed the wallpaper on people's iPhones. There was also SMS Paysom, which basically sent text messages from infected phones, and these messages just carried anti-religious sentiment. So there was nothing that was financially driven, but these are just things that the authors wanted to do to be annoying, so to speak. Okay. Another application for mobile malware, again, this is more of a traditional application, but there are some unique distinctions, is in the area of stealing information. Okay, and obviously this is something that's been done for quite some time in the traditional PC-based world, and you do see analogs of this. Within the specific context of mobile malware, there are some things that maybe are unique to steal on people's phones. For example, you can steal location information. That's something that's unique to a phone. You can get people's contact books, and I guess people do have contact books on their PCs, but on their phones they may have phone numbers and other stuff on their contact books. A third thing you can do is you can steal something called the IMEI. And the IMEI basically stands for the International Mobile Equipment Identity. Basically, it's like a unique identifier, kind of like a GUID for a phone. And the reason the IMEI is interesting is that what the bad guys can do is it turns out you can actually alter the IMEI on an existing phone and replace it with any other one. So for example, imagine you had a bad guy, and let's say there's a bad guy, and he steals a mobile phone. He physically steals a phone. Okay, so he's got the physical phone that he's stolen. Okay, now the physical phone that he's stolen will have, whenever it communicates with the cellular network, it's going to pass on its IMEI. Okay, and if let's say the original user of the phone knows his phone has been stolen, he's reported it. One of the first things that the mobile provider will do, the mobile provider will basically have a blacklist of IMEIs corresponding to stolen phones. And so if they happen to see this particular IMEI coming from a phone and they know this IMEI belonged to a stolen phone, they'll go ahead and they'll basically block that phone from getting onto the mobile network. Okay, so the cellular provider will basically blacklist that stolen phone's IMEI, and the phone will not be allowed any access to the cellular network. Now, imagine that there's some malware out there and the malware, let's say, runs on a bunch of other phones, and let's say there's some phones out there that have some malware on them. And let's say the malware steals the IMEIs from these phones. So maybe it'll steal a new IMEI from these phones. And it won't actually steal the physical phone, but it'll just take the IMEI from that phone. Okay? Now, it turns out because you can replace IMEIs on any phone whatever you want, imagine now that this guy here who has a stolen phone replaces the IMEI in a stolen phone with one of the ones that was gotten from the malware. There's a good chance that this new IMEI will not be on the blacklist, so maybe it'll be okay, and the new phone will be allowed to get onto the network. So basically and really the key here is there's a significantly better chance that an IMEI stolen via malware will go unnoticed by the victim, especially because they still physically possess their phone. So in that case, the IMEI will not be blacklisted, and if that particular IMEI is, let's say, usurped for use on a stolen phone, then the stolen phone is unlikely to be blocked. It's going to be allowed access to the cellular network and so on and so forth. And so there is some value in having a stolen IMEI number. And I don't actually know what the current black market rate is for stolen IMEI numbers, especially you have to consider the fact that there are many legitimate applications that collect IMEIs, and so there may already be a large stockpile or supply of these types of IMEIs that are maybe more ripe for stealing and maybe somewhat more easily accessible. Okay, so I don't know what the actual rate's going to be. It may not be that much. And one other thing I think it's worth keeping in mind in this context is that aside from their use by carriers, no legitimate application really needs the IMEI itself. And if it were possible, let's say, to come up with an alternate identifier, let's say an identifier that could be used in applications for that phone, then perhaps the operating system itself could be, let's say, hardened to reduce the possibility of IMEI theft, and that might help curb some motivations of mobile malware authors, and at least maybe help to reduce the possibility of IMEI theft. So what I'll do is maybe I'll stop this video right here, and I'll continue talking about more malicious actions that mobile malware can take in the next video.